Go
Thank you
ahead.
for joining us here on this Saturday. We're very honored to have our good friend Dr. Jimmy Gutman. As such, this is intended as a training call for the exclusive use of Immunotech distributors. And to always remember the products from Immunotech research do not cure anything. But as Hippocrates said some 2,500 years ago, let food be thy medicine. Simply the most important foods you can use is Immunocal, Immunocal Platinum, and Sport, as well as our other great products. We're very honored to have all of you with us here today.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's John Solleder. Welcome to the call. I know we got a lot of our friends from around the world on the call from the medical community and the non-medical community as well. So welcome to all of you. As we start, I just want to give you guys all a interesting number that popped up the other day that I think you'll find relevant. If you're looking at Immunocal as a brand that you want to market, which I assume if you're here, you want to market this as well as obviously consume it. There's 108 million people now in the United States over the age of 50. Over the next 15 years, that number will increase by 19 million people. Now think about that for a minute as a market. If you're looking at this as a business, as I do, as many of you do, just think about that. That's 19 million consumers that are going to get to that ripe old age of 50, which most of us are way past. Some of us aren't. But if you're over 50, you probably need Immunocal for a number of different things, and you'll understand better today what some of those things may be. So without any further ado, I want to introduce somebody who has had such a huge impact on this brand for some 28 years, and that's my friend Dr. Jimmy Gutman from Montreal. And Dr. Gutman, amongst other things, is a graduate of both Emory University in Atlanta as well as McGill University in Montreal. He's authored a number of different books, and I'll just mention a few of them right now. The Comprehensive Guide to Glutathione, the body's most powerful healing agent, the most powerful protector, as well as Glutathione, your key to health, as well as a number of papers, and speaks around the world, not only for Immunocal, but also on this subject of glutathione. And he's actually considered to be the world's leading expert on this subject of glutathione, which is one that is growing. When we started this 28 years ago, we almost had to spell it for people. I mean, outside of people like Dr. Boger, for example, and Dr. Jim that's on, and some of the other medical people, Dr. Dominguez and others that are in the medical community, most of us had never heard of glutathione. We used to have to tell people, glutathione, just so they could pronounce it properly. Today, no day goes by that you don't hear about the need for glutathione. And we are the world's leader for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons has been the tremendously hard work and due diligence of Dr. Gutman. So Dr. Gutman, I'm going to turn the call to you, my friend, and welcome to the call. Appreciate you doing this, especially on a Saturday.
Thank you, John. It's my absolute pleasure doing this, and I see a bunch of eager faces on my Zoom call now. We'll get right into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen now, if you give me a moment. So the host, it says the host has disabled participant screen sharing. If you can give that back to me.
You have it.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So here we go. Can you all see that?
No, we don't, Dr. White. Or Dr. Gutman.
Do you see this? Are
No.
you?
No.
No.
Really? Okay. So,
Zoom is giving people an issue today.
uh-huh. Okay, so let me just try something else. Can you see this now?
No.
No.
Huh. Okay, this should work.
There you go.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. That was a little bit challenging.
You're muted.
No.
Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr. Gutman, this is Don
Yes,
in
yeah,
Spain. I
we
can
can,
hear you okay.
we can hear you
Okay,
now.
good. Good, yeah. Wow. Zoom is being very challenging today. Okay. So there's the title page. So yes, if you want to find out more about glutathione, certainly I welcome you to visit my Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and of course the book is available. The most recent one is a comprehensive guide to glutathione, which you can probably find on Amazon. So these will be useful places for you to follow up with any other questions that we may not be able to get to today. Now, my understanding is that today's talk was actually offered to medical professionals. So it's going to be geared for medical professionals, although I'm sure that the non-health professionals on the call will be able to get something out of it. So my first question to you, we'll start off with a little quiz, is what percentage of American adults take advantage of complementary or alternative medicine, otherwise abbreviated as CAM, complementary alternative medicine? How many Americans do you think are using this? Well, the answer might surprise you. There's over 80% of your patients are going to use alternative medicine or complementary medicine at some point in time. Another question is, of these users, do you think that there's any difference in how much money they make or how much education they have? Well, the answer is actually the use is correlated with people who have a higher income and higher education. So these are richer and more educated people that are actually taking advantage of complementary or alternative.
Because complementary doesn't mean free.
Uh,
By
no.
definition, you know what I mean?
Yes. I'm wondering, could we save the questions for the end? Complementary or alternative medicine refers to um, health approaches that fall outside of conventional medicine. So, speaking of conventional medicine, obviously, most doctors have a bit of a skeptical eye about these practices. First of all, they're underregulated, which I would have to agree with. They're full of false and misleading claims. There's lack of standardization. There's adverse effects that might happen. There's interactions with medications. So there are a bunch of things that physicians, for sure, take issue with complementary or alternative medicine. But your patients are going to use this anyways. They're going to use it anyways. And there's only three ways where we can accept complementary or alternative medicine, or other people call it integrative medicine, into our medical sphere. there's only three things that are going to make the acceptance of these practices uh, something that we can consider in conventional medicine. The first thing is research. The second thing is research. And I'll bet you can guess the third thing. It's research. The only way that these practices will be considered acceptable by conventional medicine is if we put them through the same rigorous testing and clinical studies and publications that we put any other pharmaceutical through, except these are not pharmaceuticals. So let's step back and let's take a quick look at our topic today, which is really glutathione. Let's take a look at glutathione. Well, first of all, here are the two discoverers of the Immunocal product. Of course, Immunocal raises glutathione, Dr. Gustavo Bunos and Dr. Patricia Kongshaven. Dr. Bunos is highly recognized international research, mostly on aging and antioxidants. He received multiple awards from the Canadian Research Council. Dr. Patricia Kongshaven, who worked hand in hand with Dr. Bunos, we call her the great-grandmother of clinical immunology. Now, why would we call her that? Because she wrote the first chapter in the first book of clinical immunology that was broadly distributed to the medical community. So she was a real pioneer. See, immunology as a specialty wasn't even recognized until the late 1970s. Here's another individual, Dr. Wolf Droog, who worked with Immunotech for a number of years. He was the first person that actually described the effect on the immune system in a living organism. See, we've known about glutathione for over 100 years, but we only recently appreciated the role that glutathione played in the immune system. And he's been published over 300 articles, and he, in the world of anti-aging medicine and free radical medicine, it really is a demigod. Another person that has published on Immunocal is Dr. Mark Weinberg. He is the former president of the International AIDS Society. He was the former president for 3 terms running. Here is Dr. Luc Montagnier, the winner of the 2008 Nobel Prize in Medicine. And he did studies on Immunocal, and he actually published a book, which you see here, and he dedicated a complete chapter to Immunocal, not glutathione, to Immunocal. So we've been fortunate to have some really outstanding leaders in research and medicine working on this great project with us. So speaking of publications, for the doctors, you're familiar with PubMed, pubmed.gov. For those of you who are not doctors, PubMed.gov is the world's major resource for any scientific and medical article that's been written. Now, researchers who are looking for any original articles on a topic will go automatically to PubMed. Researchers are on PubMed pretty much every day. I'm on PubMed almost all the time. And most doctors, if they're interested in reading about any subject, will be resourcing PubMed for articles. Now, in 1980, when PubMed started, there was maybe 4,000 references on glutathione. But as of this year, there's over 190,000 articles on glutathione. Now, let me just put that into context because it just looks like a big number. Let me compare it to a few things. If you look up the amount of articles on vitamin C, there are maybe 40,000 articles. If you look up the amount of articles on vitamin E, there's maybe 70,000 articles. So there are actually, in the medical literature, more articles written on glutathione than on vitamin C and vitamin E put together. So this is a huge amount of information that is now being examined by the medical community, and soon the average person out there will be using the word glutathione as commonly as they use words like antioxidant or cholesterol. This will become part and parcel of your everyday language. Now, this here might be the most important slide that I'm going to show today. You cannot eat glutathione and expect it to raise the glutathione levels in your body. Now, a lot of people are selling actual glutathione as a supplement. And they're selling it in different forms, in pills, in powders, liposomal glutathione, nanoglutathione, and all kinds of glutathione. Eating glutathione is a very inefficient way of raising glutathione in your body. Now, let me explain why. If you eat glutathione, it becomes rapidly broken down in your digestive system. So very little of it, if any, makes it to your cell. Glutathione is actually manufactured inside of each and every one of your cells. Our cells make glutathione. And to raise glutathione levels in the body, you need to feed these cells the specific nutrients that they need to manufacture glutathione, what we call precursors. So to raise glutathione, you need to use glutathione precursors. So if you want to fall asleep after this slide, at least remember what we've just discussed. Now, if you go and look up one of these two books, I understand most of our listeners are in the United States, so you may or may not have heard, the doctors have heard of this, the PDR, Physician's Desk Reference. In Canada, we use a book called the CPS. One of these books sits on the desk of every single doctor and every single pharmacist in North America. Everybody has this book. The doctors know what I'm talking about. And in these books are listed all of the medications that a doctor can prescribe, except when you turn to the letters I, you'll find something called Immunocal, a non-drug that doesn't require a prescription. So what do you find when you look up glutathione precursors in these books? Well, the most popular glutathione precursor is something called NAC, N-acetylcysteine. This is the most studied and the most popular way of raising glutathione levels. It's a fantastic drug. We use it as an antidote, for example, for acetaminophen poisoning, and it very, very effectively raises glutathione. However, it does have some problems. Number one, at therapeutic ranges, side effects are actually quite common. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Mostly these side effects are gastrointestinal. The other problem that NAC or N-acetylcysteine has, it has what we call a short half-life, which means it only hangs around your system for a few hours. So NAC needs to be taken several times a day to keep levels of glutathione up. Otherwise, it's just like up and down, up and down. So if you felt sick the first time you took N-acetylcysteine, you're probably going to feel 4 times as sick the fourth time you take it during the day. And find there are other problems. For example, the effect of N-acetylcysteine wears off after a number of weeks because you end up building up free cysteine in your bloodstream, a condition called hypercystinemia, which is actually a pro-oxidant state, which is exactly what you don't want. So NAC, a very effective drug, but not without problems. And the other substance that you're going to find is Immunocal. And it's written up the same way all the other drugs are written up, with pharmacology, clinical indications, contraindications, references, all the language that doctors and physicians need to read. So there are 2 ways of raising glutathione according to the PDR and the CPS. And the Immunocal is actually the richest source of natural glutathione precursors. NAC, people may call it a natural product, but it's anything but. It's absolutely a pharmacological substance with a lot of chemistry involved. So, what are the rules of glutathione? Well, if we had time, I could talk about 40 or 50 different things that glutathione does inside of your cell. But for today, we're going to look at just 4 rules. And if you understand these 4 rules, you understand 90% of what glutathione does. And the way to remember these 4 rules is to remember glutathione. What a great idea. What does IDEA stand for? I stands for the immune system. D stands for detoxification. E stands for energy. And A stands for antioxidant. Let's look at these in turn. Glutathione in the immune system, if you have low glutathione levels, you are by definition immunocompromised. For example, the classic immunocompromised disease, being AIDS or HIV, are by definition glutathione deficient. But people with hepatitis are glutathione deficient. People with major infections are glutathione deficient. People who want to optimize their immune function need to have optimized glutathione levels. So I tell people to think of glutathione literally as food for the immune system. The D stands for detoxification. Now, I mentioned that we raise glutathione levels in certain cases of overdoses, like acetaminophen overdose. And most doctors will know that NAC is the antidote to an overdose of acetaminophen. But what they don't know is that glutathione is responsible for the elimination of literally thousands of chemicals, everything from cigarette smoke to automobile exhaust to pesticides to herbicides to heavy metals, and literally thousands of chemicals in the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the food that we eat. We require glutathione for their elimination. And I tell people that next to water, the most important detoxification substance we have is glutathione. Energy, I could spend an hour talking about energy at a cellular level, at a subcellular level, at a whole body level. I can talk about all the athletes that are using Immunocal, both professional and high-level amateurs. Just to give you a quick idea, our mitochondria, those little structures inside of your cell that provide energy. Think of the mitochondria like little batteries providing energy for the cell. These mitochondria use up tremendous amounts of oxygen, and hence the byproduct is oxyradicals or free radicals. Now, these free radicals will slow down the energy production of the mitochondria. And unless the mitochondria have a constant supply of glutathione, they will literally burn up. And finally, for antioxidant. We refer to glutathione as the master antioxidant. Now, why would we call it a term like master? It sounds more like a marketing term. It's the master antioxidant because none of the antioxidants that we know of, and we know between 2,000 and 4,000 different antioxidants, depending on how you classify them, none of these antioxidants can work properly without the presence of glutathione. Glutathione recharges antioxidants. Glutathione recycles antioxidants. And unlike the vast majority of antioxidants which you need to obtain from your food, glutathione is produced by your body. So the master antioxidant, you'll hear that term over and over again. So if you remember these four roles, then you're well ahead of the game. The problem is that we lose glutathione literally minute by minute from drugs, from a poor diet, from stress. Stress will lower your glutathione. Infection clearly lowers your glutathione. Pollution is very taxing to your glutathione levels. The aging process itself, we lose glutathione as we age. So glutathione replenishment is being recognized more and more every month. There's more and more to suggest this, that replenishment of glutathione is critical. Let's just look at a couple of studies. Here is a graph that shows glutathione levels and aging. And we see that as we age, our glutathione levels drop. They drop about 10% every decade. But what's strange about this graph is that if you measure glutathione levels in people that are like 100 years old, all of a sudden you see that they have almost normal glutathione levels. Question is, why? And the answer is, that's why they're 100 years old, because they had the inherent ability, they had the genetic makeup of maintaining normal glutathione levels throughout their life. And that's why they're 100 years old. Their friends and enemies who have a normal glutathione genetics have been selected out of the population. This is natural selection at its best. Here's another study that measured glutathione levels in different populations. First, they measured glutathione levels in young volunteers, and as expected, there were pretty good glutathione levels. Then they measured glutathione levels in healthy elderly people. By healthy, we mean they only went to the doctor when they needed to. And again, halfway decent glutathione levels. They looked at elderly outpatients. These are older people that visited their doctor on a regular basis to get their meds refilled, to get their blood pressure checked. Again, less than the healthy elderly people. And finally, elderly people that were in the hospital, they had the lowest glutathione levels. So you see a perfect correlation with glutathione levels and their level of health. So we initially, I guess it's over 45 years ago, we started doing studies on Immunocal. We were looking mostly at the illness model, and this was very, very relevant. Later on, Uh, in the 21st century, we started looking at healthy people, and the healthiest people that we could find, of course, are athletes. And this is one study where we took a bunch of university athletes. We put half of them on a placebo and half of them on Immunocal. And at the end of the summer, which they were spent doing the same training routines, we found an increase in muscle strength and performance of between 10 and 15%. Just to explain to you what an enormous advantage that is, if you look at the Olympic Games, the majority of Olympic Games, the difference between the person who won the gold medal and is on the front page of every newspaper and the person who finishes in sixth place, who nobody ever remembers their name, the difference is less than 1%. So when we published this study, we used the phones were ringing off the wall. We actually had phones on the wall for you younger people, um, from athletes, from sports teams, from sports organizations, from nutritionists, all wanting to take advantage of the Immunocal product. And now, when John and I watch the Olympics on TV, we'll point to the screen and say, he's on Immunocal, she's on Immunocal, he's on Immunocal. Really, there are many Olympians taking the Immunocal product. Moving on to a more recent study that we've published, we looked at kids with autism. Just to let you know that it was found out in the about 20 years ago that autistic kids, up to 80% of them are glutathione deficient. And I'm not going to get into how the glutathione deficiency is involved with autism at this point. I have videos and articles for you to read, but just for you to know that autistic kids are glutathione deficient. So we did an interventional study, a double-blind, randomized study at one of the major autism research centers in the United States, which is in Florida. And clearly, we showed that we were able to raise their glutathione levels substantially. And the question is, does an autistic kid care about a blood test? No. Does a parent care about a blood test? Not so much. What do they care about? They care about how their kid is doing. And when we looked at their behavior, there was a clear improvements over placebo in adaptive behavior, communications, daily living, socialization. All of these had improved. And that ultimately led to us acquiring a patent on Immunocal as a treatment for autistic spectrum disorders. I mean, find me another nutritional supplement that can make that kind of a claim. And of course, we're always looking at other patents. We have a patent pending for neuropsychiatric or neurodegenerative disorders, of course, including things like Parkinson's, including things like Alzheimer's. We have a patent pending for traumatic brain injury. This includes not just an attraction to the military, who came up with the idea in the first place, but American football, soccer, for you Canadians, hockey. For people in Mexico, you'd be more interested, perhaps not just in soccer, but in martial arts. These are all things that we're going to be able to address with our new patent. And we have many older patents. Here's a patent for the use of Immunocal in the treatment of AIDS. We have a patent for the treatment of AIDS. We have a patent for the treatment of cancer. A nutritional supplement that has an anti-cancer, in other words, chemotherapeutic patent. We have this. Of course, we don't use this in our marketing because in the United States and Canada, you're not supposed to make any medical claims about a nutritional product and a major disease, but this patent exists. Let's look at one of the major studies that we did to get this patent. Here we're looking at the ability, see, we looked at lung cancer patients and we looked at terminal lung cancer patients. And the reason they were called terminal lung cancer patients because they were already losing weight. They were losing muscle mass. And this defines a terminal cancer patient. And they were on chemotherapy and radiotherapy because people are always asking whether raising glutathione is going to interfere with chemotherapy and radiotherapy. You can tell by the title that we were successful. Cysteine-rich protein, the Immunocal, reverses weight loss in lung cancer patients. Now, this was statistically relevant, and this was the first time that a nutritional intervention was able to reverse the weight loss and body cell mass taking place in cancer patients. So we weren't just looking at body weight, we also looked at quality of life measurements, and we used a number of these, and these people were less nervous, they were feeling better, they had a better appetite, they were less depressed. And of course, you're going to ask the question, what about survival? Well, we went back and visited these patients a year after. Less than half of the placebo group were still alive, but over 80% of the patients treated with Immunocal were still kicking. And this is a major finding. And so I welcome you to look at this publication. Whoever invited you to the call will be able to provide this electronically. This is a publication that makes Immunocal stand out from everybody else. We have close to 100 studies now that have been published in the medical literature looking at our product, including almost 40 human studies and what we call 26 gold standard human trials. What's a gold standard human trial? It's a randomized, placebo-controlled, statistically relevant clinical trial done in human beings. Nobody else does this. Nobody else has clinical trials on their product, not just on glutathione. There's 190,000 articles on glutathione, 100 on Immunocal specifically. And these cover everything from cancer to immunology to neurology and on and on and on. So please get a hold of these studies, and thank you very much for your attention.
That was incredible, Dr. Gutman. We appreciate you so much on these Saturday calls. Dr. Gutman will not be dosing and diagnosing and prescribing on this of your questions here. If you have questions for him, he won't be telling you those kind of things. That's not what these calls are for. These are educational purposes. So once again, incredible here. Looks like John Solleder is having a little trouble with his system there, Dr. Gutman. So if you want to speak with Dr. Gutman, if you would, you one at a time, John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Keith. My camera decided it wanted to take the rest of the day off, so you don't have to look at my pretty face, everybody. But let's start with anybody from the
Let me suggest this, John. If you have a question for Dr. Gutman and you're a doctor, if you want to raise your hand, and then John will admit you and unmute you and allow you to have that conversation with him. All right, let's start with that.
Let's go. Let me go to the chat to do that. Okay. Well, let me go to John over in Virginia. John, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
John, you know the doctors that you have on the line. Is there anyone that you want to call on that may have a question for Dr. Gutman?
No, not really. I think Tim's here. I think he had a question, but I think you answered that the other day, John. I'm not, or Dr. Gutman answered it. I'm not sure. If anybody has a question, just ask.
Okay.
So that question, Dr. Gutman, what is the equivalent dose to 600 milligrams of NAC?
Well, it's hard to determine equivalent dose because, for example, a dose of 600 milligrams of NAC, that will raise your glutathione levels for a number of hours, but certainly not 24 hours. At the very least, you need to be taking that dose if you want to keep physiologically similar levels of glutathione throughout the day. You need to take that at least twice a day. So one, the half-life is completely different. We could find increases in glutathione levels even after a day after ingesting Immunocal. The other difference is what is really the optimal dose of NAC? Now, when we use NAC in the emergency department, for example, we're not using 600 milligrams. We may be using grams and grams of NAC. So it's really hard to compare. The other advantage of using Immunocal over N-acetylcysteine, and I have a couple of videos looking at that if you want to visit my YouTube channel. NAC provides cysteine for glutathione manufacturing. Now, the limiting amino acid for the manufacture of glutathione is, in fact, cysteine. Why don't we just use cysteine? Because cysteine itself is rapidly oxidized in the digestive tract. So what scientists discovered in the 1960s is that if you tag a little acetyl group onto the cysteine, it prevents the oxidation. It actually prevents 85% of the oxidation or so. So about 15% of the cysteine remains unoxidized and can make it to the cell. So really, NAC provides cysteine, which has absolutely no nutritional value. One thing that we didn't talk about today, because we're limited to time, and I can talk about glutathione for hours, but I'd put you all asleep. One of the things that we didn't mention is the protein value of Immunocal. When we look at edible proteins, we can assign to any protein certain numbers. One of these numbers is called a BV, a biological value. And in essence, what a biological value is how important that protein is to your overall metabolism and what it provides. So we give it a number. Eggs, for example, is 100, and that is an arbitrary number where other proteins are compared to it. Immunocal is 157. 157. There is no other edible protein that has a higher biological value, higher BV, than Immunocal. So you are getting an absolutely premier source of protein, which supplies all of the essential amino acids that you need for your metabolism. So just based on nutrition, this is really an exceptional product. NAC doesn't have any of that.
Tim, did you want to ask a question? Can you hear me okay? Dr. Tim?
Yeah, I was just asking. I'm not a doctor. I was asking because I'm in the business and I call on psychiatry, and a lot of them use 1,200 to 2,400 milligrams of N-acetylcysteine for different psychological disease states in
Yes.
psychiatry.
Yes. Well, I first of all, I was just going to interject. You're so far ahead of the game if you're doing that. It's very rare to find somebody in psychology or psychiatry trying to address glutathione levels. And as you know, clearly you know, there's more and more research coming out about the importance of glutathione in many of these psychiatric diagnoses. And so good for you. I'm not sure if your patients are having side effects or not, but definitely it would be easier for your patients to take the Immunocal, which is once a day. And not only will they be raising their glutathione levels, but many of these patients have nutritional challenges. One depressed person may not be eating what they need, or they may be eating too much, probably in the form of junk food. But usually they're malnourished. Anxious people. So what you're going to do is you're going to provide them with the ultimate edible protein, and that in itself, in being able to provide great nutrition and all of their essential amino acids, that alone, besides glutathione, is going to make them feel a bit better. So yeah, I would strongly consider moving your NAC patients over to Immunocal because of these advantages. Good for you, Tim.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have more questions for Dr. Gutman?
I have a question. Diana Kelly out here in Malibu, California. I was just at the big natural food show, the Expo West, and I'm blown away by Dr. Gutman about this being an edible protein, because it does say, I'm on the package right now, and it does say whey protein isolate. And as well as all our amino acids that's needed. So to have a one-stop shop, to have A to Z, is amazing. And it's a food, which is so important. And I came out of this conference because I was doing PR and I was writing for Top Doctor. And sure enough, I caught something. I don't know what it was, but it went right into my immune and it went into my throat, the whole thing. And I jumped on using, because I called John and he said, "Whoa, get on the blue and get on the platinum." And I got right on that platinum with the whey protein isolate. And I feel like it jumped into gear. It got right into gear and really started hitting my immune system very quickly, because it does have magnesium, creatine, calcium citrate. So it has all these amazing ingredients that seem to help my immune system and support it with a strong immune system quickly. So I just wanted to ask you, when in my situation and facing, an immune issue and getting sick, just if there's any key points about these products that really like nail it, they really get in the bloodstream, they get going right away. And then
Uh,
I've been doing just juices. All I did was do bone broth, juice, water, and the Immunocal.
that you see, some of our most loyal customers are health professionals and teachers. And why is that? Because both health professionals and teachers are constantly being exposed to viral diseases. And I know that as a physician, um, I was on the Immunocal all the time, but when I had that feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to wake up tomorrow sick as a dog, I would double up on my Immunocal. And most of the time, I wouldn't miss a day of work. So many of my colleagues and many teachers um, are absolute fans of this product because of the resistance that it imparts upon them. And if you get a chance to read any of my stuff, you'll see me state very often that Immunocal absolutely functions as an antiviral. So good for you, and thank you for that testimonial.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for doing these calls because it adds so much value and understanding. And certainly one of the things that I'm not a nutritionist, but it's certainly something important to me is that you want to eat your food. And that's what's great about this. This is an edible protein. And so many people are hooked on supplements. I mean, this was a $1 billion show with all the supplement companies and, supplement. And what I love about this is, boy, I can go to Immunocal and get all my amino acids, get my protein, and like you said, have my immune function on a high level. So that's a huge advantage. I just
Yes.
really appreciate,
Yeah.
having an experience. It's as a personal experience. So I want to
Well,
share this with others,
thank you.
practitioners.
Just to let you know what I had for breakfast this morning um, is I had applesauce with the Immunocal mixed in, some nuts and some cut up fresh fruit. And that was my meal. And that was probably as good a meal nutritionally as anything you're going to find. So yeah. Guys, I see that we're heading towards the hour. I'm going to have to um, call it now, but again, I welcome people to go to my Facebook page and go to my YouTube channel, and of course, get a hold of my book. And many of your questions will be answered there. Oh, I see Dr. Boger is holding my book. Thank you. Um, if not, just write your questions down and send them to John or Keith, and if they can't answer them, I'll get around to it at some point in time. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Gutman. Everybody else, you guys can hang on. We can talk a few more minutes if you want. I know John wants to share some stuff with about Top Doctor and all of that. If you hang on, I'm going to turn the recording off. But I just want to add one thing before we turn the recording off, Dr. Gutman, before you go. And I think you and I were together in the Dominican Republic about 5 years ago, maybe more. And there were a couple of guys wanted to talk to me there from their Olympic weightlifting team. And when I met with these guys, because my background is in not only powerlifting but in a variety of different power sports. Anyway, long story short, what this one gentleman shared with me, who was one of their coaches, was that because they have a deficiency of protein on that island, they don't have a lot of meat sources or other proteins. A lot of these guys, these are world-class weightlifters, by the way. These are guys that you see in the Olympics for that country. They use Immunocal, like Dr. Gutman just described his breakfast, as their meal replacement to get their adequate protein. And they're in the gym, 2 hours plus banging weights. So, you just, take what you want from that story, but it's certainly relevant. Dr. Gutman, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Dr. Gutman.
Okay, I'm going to turn the recording off here and just.
Well, as always, this